Good morning. You're listening to The Brief Wake Up, your mindful start to the day. I am Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. On the health front this morning, let's talk about a very common problem that almost everyone has experienced at some point: neck pain from sleeping, and more importantly, how to prevent it. Most sleep-related neck pain isn't caused by injury. It's caused by alignment. Your neck is designed to hold your head, about 10 to 12 pounds, in a neutral position. When you sleep, the goal isn't comfort alone. It's keeping your head, neck, and spine aligned for hours at a time. When that alignment breaks down, muscles stay partially contracted all night. Blood flow drops, small joints stiffen, and you wake up sore, tight, or with limited range of motion. The biggest culprit is pillow height and shape. If your pillow is too high, your neck stays flexed forward all night. Too low, and it tilts backward or sideways. For side sleepers, your pillow should fill the space between your shoulder and your ear, keeping your neck straight, not angled. For back sleepers, you want a thinner pillow that supports the natural curve of your neck without pushing your head forward. Stomach sleeping is the hardest on the neck. It forces prolonged rotation, and if you can reduce or avoid it, neck pain often improves dramatically. Another overlooked factor is mattress firmness. If your mattress is too soft, your shoulders sink while your neck stays elevated. Too firm, and pressure builds along the upper spine. Medium firm tends to be the sweet spot for most people. Now, prevention isn't just about sleep position. Daytime posture matters. Hours spent looking down at phones, laptops, or charts, especially with the head forward, shorten neck muscles and make nighttime pain more likely. Simple habits like raising screens to eye level and taking short posture breaks can make a real difference. If you wake up with neck pain, gentle movement helps more than rest. Slow range of motion exercises, heat, and light stretching improve blood flow and reduce stiffness. Avoid aggressive stretching first thing in the morning. And a key rule: persistent pain isn't normal. If neck pain lasts more than a few weeks, radiates into the arm, causes numbness, tingling, or weakness, that's not just a bad pillow. That deserves medical evaluation. The bottom line: neck pain from sleeping is usually mechanical and preventable. Good alignment at night, better posture during the day, and early attention to symptoms can spare you a lot of morning pain. That's your health check for today. The news is next. There was a major update this weekend in the long-running Jeffrey Epstein case, as the federal government completes what it's calling the final large-scale release of the so-called Epstein files. The U.S. Department of Justice has made public more than 3 million pages of documents tied to investigations into Epstein and his network, including emails, text messages, flight logs, photographs, and investigative records dating back decades. The release follows a transparency law passed late last year, requiring the government to disclose unclassified material connected to Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a federal prison sentence. Justice Department officials say the document review process is now complete, and that nothing in the newly released material meets the legal threshold for additional criminal charges. In other words, the files add volume, not prosecutions. But that hasn't quieted criticism. Victims' advocates and press organizations are raising serious concerns after discovering that dozens of victims' names, including individuals who were minors at the time, appeared in documents that were released without adequate redaction. Attorneys representing survivors are now asking courts to restrict access to parts of the database and to correct what they call preventable harm. The disclosures have also reignited debate about accountability. While many high-profile figures are mentioned in communications or travel records, the Justice Department has emphasized that being named in the files does not imply criminal wrongdoing. Several public officials and business leaders referenced in the material have issued statements denying any involvement in Epstein's crimes. Internationally, the release has had ripple effects, with political fallout overseas, as foreign officials respond to newly surfaced correspondence and associations. For critics, the core issue remains unresolved, whether transparency alone is enough, or whether key evidence was missed, lost, or never pursued. For now, federal officials say the Epstein investigation is effectively closed, even as public scrutiny of the case appears very much alive. The big sip is next. This morning, we continue with our Living with Absence Grief series. One of the most counterintuitive things about grief is this: healthy grieving does not mean being sad all the time. In fact, psychologically healthy grief almost never looks like constant sorrow. Instead, grief tends to move back and forth between two different modes. One is loss-focused. That's when you're remembering, yearning or crying, replaying moments, feeling the weight of what's gone. The other is restoration-focused. That's when you're doing life. You're working, laughing, distracting yourself and building new routines, showing up to things that still need you. Most people assume restoration mode means avoidance, that if you're laughing or focused or momentarily okay, you must be suppressing grief. But neurologically, the opposite is true. If you stayed fully immersed in loss all the time, your nervous system would be overwhelmed. So the brain naturally oscillates. Grief then life. Grief then life. This is why grief often comes in waves instead of a straight line. And this is also why people feel guilt when they catch themselves feeling okay. They think, how can I laugh when they're gone? How can I enjoy this moment? What does this say about my love? But that moment of okay is not betrayal. It's regulation. It's your nervous system coming up for air. Those lighter moments don't mean your grief is shrinking. They mean your brain is learning how to carry loss and keep living at the same time. That back and forth isn't failure, it's adaptation. Over time, you start to realize something else. You're not living one life anymore. You're living two. There's the life where absence is always present, where the loss is part of the background of everything. And there's the life where you still engage, still connect, still move forward. These lives don't cancel each other out. They coexist. And learning to let them coexist without guilt is one of the hardest parts of grief. Because the world expects consistency. It expects either sadness or recovery, either brokenness or strength. But grief doesn't work that way. Grief is your brain slowly recalibrating to a world where someone who mattered is no longer there. That recalibration takes time, not because you're weak, not because you're avoiding, but because the bond was real. Grief isn't something you get over. It's something your nervous system has to rewire around. And that rewiring is one of the hardest things a human brain is ever asked to do. Grief is not weakness. It's not a lack of resilience. It's not something broken in you. It's what a bonded brain does when a bond is broken. The lighter roast is next. There's a quiet moment most of us have at some point in our lives. It's not dramatic, no announcement, no big reveal. It's just the day you realize your parents aren't characters in your life story. They're just people. When you're a kid, parents feel solid, certain, like they know what they're doing. They make rules. They make decisions. They seem permanent, like fixtures of the world, not participants in it. And then one day something shifts. You hear uncertainty in their voice. You notice fear behind a choice. You see them hesitate where you thought they were sure. You start to recognize patterns, habits they repeat, reactions they default to, limits they bump into over and over again. And slowly you realize something uncomfortable. They were guessing too. They were making decisions with incomplete information. They were carrying their own fears, their own wounds, their own unfinished stories, and trying to raise a human at the same time. You realize they were once someone's child. They had parents who failed them in certain ways. They lived through moments that shaped them, sometimes hardened them, long before you arrived. That realization can be strangely comforting, and it can also be deeply painful. Because when parents become human, they also become fallible, capable of love and harm, care and blind spots, protection and absence. Seeing them clearly doesn't mean excusing what hurt you. It doesn't mean minimizing your experience. It doesn't mean rewriting the past to make it easier to carry. It means holding two truths at the same time. They did the best they could with what they had. And sometimes, what they had wasn't enough. That kind of clarity is hard, but it's also freeing. Because when you stop expecting your parents to be more than human, you stop expecting yourself to be more than human too. You don't have to get everything right. You don't have to heal perfectly. You don't have to parent, love, or live without mistakes. You're allowed to learn late. You're allowed to see things differently now. You're allowed to change. Understanding isn't agreement, it's perspective. And that is our lighter roast. Our commemoration is next. Today is February 2nd, and it's Groundhog Day. The annual reminder that we're oddly obsessed with predicting change instead of making it. The tradition isn't really about weather, it's about repetition, doing the same things, waiting for different outcomes, and hoping a shadow tells us what comes next. But February 2nd also marks something far more consequential. On this day, in 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, ending the Mexican-American War and permanently reshaping the map of the United States. California, Arizona, New Mexico, and large parts of the Southwest changed hands. Borders moved, identities shifted, and history quietly rerouted millions of lives. Taken together, it's an interesting pairing. One day about repetition, one day about irreversible change. A reminder that some days feel like they repeat forever, and others redraw the world in a single moment. That's February 2nd. Today we looked at how small mechanics, like sleep alignment, quietly shape how we feel, how massive disclosures can still leave big questions unresolved, and how grief teaches us to live between loss and life at the same time. From repetition to rupture, from habit to history, February 2nd reminds us that some days feel the same, until suddenly they don't. And most change, whether personal or collective, isn't predicted in advance. It's lived through, one recalibration at a time. This is Dr. Robinson for the Brief Wake Up. Stay calm, kind, and curious. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.